Yep.
Let's call this meeting to order on October 7th. Karen, can you please do a roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Feist,
Here.
Councilmember Swift,
Oh, hit your button.
Here. Excuse me. My mic was off.
Mayor Gunzelman,
Here.
and I have Councilmember Seark and Reardon absent.
That's right. Thank you. If you can all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Brings us to the public forum. At this time, the public is permitted to address the city council on items not appearing on the agenda. Comments may not exceed 5 minutes. Anyone in the public care to address the council on an item not on the agenda? I did leave 30 letters from third grader members of the public that Dan and Tom have, if anyone wants to look. That takes us to the city manager's report, Tom.
Yep. There we go. All right. Those always kind of give you some updates according to our annual priorities. So tonight you guys have the final closeout for Ora Madre street repaving. Dan and Public Works, they also took the City Rover AI data that we've been getting and they patched kind of 15 to 20 potholes that it identified. We still had that for a couple more weeks, I guess.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, so last meeting, we have this free trial of something called City Rover. It's a camera that mounts in front of a pickup truck. And it uses AI to detect potholes. And so we took some of that data and we went out and looked. And Dan was telling me today, most of them were actually potholes, a few weren't. So
I questioned, it kind of caught me because I saw some like potholes filled here just down the street. And I thought maybe I misunderstood the
yeah, no.
pothole mission. I'm sure you are on that too.
And then Public Works also cleaned up some trees at various places that were either impacting power poles or the roads. And then in terms of our budget, one of the items tonight is a new financial software system. We're also working on our capital improvement plan, which is just an update tonight to update our Nexus report, which impacts our developer impact fees. And then the police department has actually formed a nonprofit foundation, and this will let them take donations where people can get a tax deduction. And so they're looking at that as another way potentially to help fund equipment, things like that. On the wastewater front, I think last time I said we were planning the I&I flow meters, so those have been installed now. We are near completion of the data collection phase for our response to the water board.
Are those rented? Is that how we do it? Okay. And then the same company compiles the data, or that we do that? It's okay.
Yeah, same company will compile the data, and they said they'll keep them out there until they get data that's useful to us. So.
Oh, so we're not bound by, oh, gee, we didn't have a storm. And
no, if we get a storm and somehow their data doesn't collect, then they'll wait for the next one. So yeah.
Great.
Or if we don't get a storm.
Or if we don't get a storm until, January, February, it doesn't matter. So.
Yeah. Who knows?
We're also working on submitting kind of financial data to iBank that will again let us figure out what the city's borrowing capacity could be. We're aiming to have that ready to submit kind of at the end of October. And then either later this week or early next week, Ione should switch back to ARSA and take a little bit more wastewater from us before the season's over. And then we're still waiting for bids on the freshwater diversion repair. And then also had a good meeting with Crystal Jack, the CEO at the Rancheria, and we're working several different items, but the main one is the completing the sewer extension. They are pretty much complete with the closeout at Pine Woods, but there's still some more work to be done on the sewer line extension.
So you mentioned Pine Woods. Is that just that's not a restart, that's just a cleanup of the site? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we had a bunch of requirements to close it out, like for safety primarily.
Okay.
Dan, when you're taking care of trees, are you using the chipper at the fire department?
No, we're talking about like Rubini coming out and doing like tree trimming up high.
And some economic updates. So I'm in the background, I'm kind of evaluating the potential for a startup incubator proposal for this Jobs First funding. So I think, was Andrew here at the last meeting, 2 meetings ago? Yeah, so there's about 9 million in funding available. And just working on this idea of potentially using some space at the grammar school to help support startups. There seems to be some interest. Some other updates is hopefully you've seen the harvest theme downtown. I think downtown's looking pretty nice. The scarecrow contest seems popular. I've heard positive things walking around. Hotel Sutter completed their work on their outdoor dining area. I think they also did a nice job. The railing work looks nice. And then a couple of council members and I were reaching out to property owners about empty storefronts. So I think we have 8 or 9 empty storefronts on Main Street, and we just wanted to contact property owners and see if there's anything the city can do to help get those spaces rented. And then just kind of other updates. Weeds have been cut down in the creek. Not quite all the way to the wastewater plant. We should finish that off hopefully next week or 2. But the majority of the creek has been trimmed. We also took a power hose out and washed playground equipment. Had some complaints from residents. They were fairly dirty. The Feast of the Foundry had a successful fundraiser. And the reason I mentioned that is those are city-owned buildings and they're investing in those buildings. I also had a discussion with the superintendent of the school district about the city potentially taking over the grammar school. There's some interest there.
You mean the primary school?
The primary school,
okay.
sorry. There would have to be a lot split done and we'd have to get an easement for parking. But you know, that building no longer meets standards for school, can never really be used as a school. So there seems to be some interest. They're going to take it to the Board of Education and see if they want us to continue this discussion before it goes anywhere. Also talked to him about renewing our pool lease, which expired several years ago, and they're going to take the lead on that. They just recently redid a lease with Ione. And then this other picture is the Eureka Gold Mine. If you haven't been up there, and Public Works did a great job on cleanup up there, kind of weed abatement for fire fuel management. Looks quite different now if you go up there. And again, a lot of great events. We had, I guess, a quilting show this weekend in the auditorium. Next weekend's a car show. Just a reminder, city offices are closed on Columbus Day. And then we have Witches Walk, a wine walk. And then we get into the kind of Christmas events. The tree lighting will be December 6th. La Posadas, and then the Festival of Lights will be the weekend after that. And then in terms of your upcoming agendas for us a year, I think we're going to come back to you guys with just an investment policy. we've been following a fairly conservative one. No real change there. Just want to have a council approved policy in place. I don't think we have one.
There is one.
There, what?
There is one.
There is one? Okay.
Yes, I'll see if I can find it. Yeah, it was even goes quite a ways back. I
Yeah.
think it even might have preceded hers, to be honest.
I think Jody Stenick had prepared an update and that,
I've seen a document.
yeah. And Sandy handed me like an update that I don't think was ever approved. So we were just going to finish that off.
Does that include the, what's that trust called for CalPERS?
No, it really just was target levels for reserves. And it's recommending,
Okay,
you know,
so the document I'm talking about, I don't know if it dealt with reserves. It
Okay.
was just sort of a general thing about investment
okay.
guidelines.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you want to send me what you have,
Yeah.
this one was more a policy on kind of what reserve levels we should
Yes,
aim
now
at.
that Amy was working on too, so.
Okay. We're also going to have our annual update of the police department. Dan's been working on a striping plan around town, and we'll bring you a draft map of that. We'll have a first quarter financial review, and hopefully the capital improvement plan next phase will come back to you guys. As well as Aaron's been working on some zoning code cleanup. There's a couple of places, particularly in the residential zoning, where things are not always 100% clear. So we're just trying to clarify things, not really changing anything, just trying to get rid of spots where people get confused. And then just a couple announcements. Next week, I'm going to be at the Cal Cities Conference, Wednesday to Friday. Announced earlier today internally, Karen's going to be leaving the city. I do want to say a big thank you to Karen. She's served the city for 10 years. And we're looking to transition to an in-person city clerk. And then I also want to say congrats to Derek, who is leaving us for a honeymoon and won't be back till October 25th. But both of his partners are going to be filling in while he's gone.
Good. I hope not.
Yep. And that's my update. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Takes us to item 6, the approval of the minutes from September 16th.
Do you have any questions or corrections or questions?
I do.
Okay.
On B, let's see, 9B. Dan LaFontaine, like the third paragraph from the bottom, Dan noted that it is not economically feasible to work with other agencies due to the distance. I would add other than Ione, because I think you said geography doesn't work other than Ione. I think you specifically said that because it's downhill. That's all I had.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as revised.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. There's nothing on the consent agenda. Tom gave up on us on consent. No ordinances. Let's do 9A, the Oro Madre closeout.
Yeah, it's really not much for me to say. It's pretty straightforward. If you guys have any questions.
I'm really glad to see it done. I drove up there again today. It looks really good. Did you get any participation from the school district at all?
They did their little area. Their
They
little,
did.
yeah,
Okay, they, all right.
little
that's-
emergency
that's a little
drive through down.
walkway,
down to the-
driveway down to the,
football field.
oh, good. Okay,
Yep, they
that's
did that.
good. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah,
it.
that was theirs.
Thank
yeah.
you.
And this is the whole shebang, including the sewer pipes and manholes and stuff, or just the road work?
Pretty sure it's everything.
Pretty sure it's everything.
Cool, that's great. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
9B, the Weber Geo contract.
Yeah, so as we were working through the FEMA process, they did an audit on us and said that we had some old language in our federal contracts. And the Weber Geo contracts, both federal and non-federal, had also expired. So working with WGA and with Derek, these two contracts are basically updates. We changed the language that the federal government said we needed to have. Mainly it was about sort where you verify that a contractor doesn't have any outstanding issues. We needed to refer to a federal website instead of a California state website, just some minor things like that. And then both of the contracts, you know, we can use other engineering experts for other projects when needed. And that was it. So again, it's really just an update, mainly because the current ones had expired.
That was my only question, if, you know, it dealt with exclusivity, because we use other engineers, especially for sewer. Jim, Susan? Anything on this?
No, I looked through it. It looked fine.
I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we authorize the city manager to execute the professional service agreements with Weber Geo.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 9C, the Tyler Technology contract.
You guys are so efficient. It must be the other two council members that make the meetings go long.
They just drag us down.
So we're coming back to you. This is, we talked about and
Only
we
kidding.
we budgeted for a new software system. You know, and this is really more than just a software system. I don't know if you guys looked at the staff report. It's called an ERP. It's an enterprise resource planning. It has lots of different modules. We are getting kind of the minimum. I mean, it did go through module by module and say, you know, kind of what's optional, what's not optional. So we're getting the core financial piece. We're getting a module that will handle our sewer billing, which I guess technically that could be optional, but we have to do the billing. Today we do it in a very manual process. It takes pretty much everybody in the finance office about 3 days to get the bills printed, stuffed, and mailed. It also will allow us to do our payroll, which we pay a separate firm for payroll right now. And also keep track of our billing that are project-based billings that we can assign them out to like developers and things when we charge fees. We did almost a full day of demos where we stepped through every module, and everybody in the city who worked in a particular area came in, asked questions. And there are quite a few other cities that have switched from moms to this system. So it seems to be a good solution. So I don't know if you guys have any questions.
My only question was, were there other alternatives besides Tyler? And if so, did we consider?
There are definitely other alternatives, right?
Uh-huh.
There's
And-
large software like Oracle and SAP. There's some other smaller ones. I did talk to some of the other city managers in the county.
And
The reason we kind of narrowed in on Tyler pretty quickly is this consultant that we used from Auburn. He really recommended Tyler, and he's done several migrations, and he's going to help do our migration as well. And so again, part of the overhead of doing this is typically takes staff time to kind of figure out how you want to map your processes onto this new software. And so having Andy there to help, I think is going to just let us do it with a lot less risk. So I didn't go as deep with any other provider, but I did, I think, kick the tires
okay.
fairly well on this
Good.
one. Yeah. And Derek looked at the contract. You said you've had some experience too.
Mhm.
A lot of agencies have standard form.
Good.
They're good out.
Great.
Providing.
Good.
I think it's great. It looks like, over the last, I guess, couple years, the council has directed the staff to kind of clean up the finance reports and categories, so it's more user friendly and seems like it's part of that process as well.
Will this help in the budgeting process too, I imagine?
It does, we're not getting to have a separate like budgeting module, which we are not getting. But in terms of being able to get reports and things, it'll help, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so if we sign tonight, they have a implementation team they really can't start till January. And they said, it's in the report, I think they say it takes 7 to 12 months. Hopefully we're on the lower end of that.
Really?
Yeah, so this is not something we do lightly, and I pushed on that a little bit. We might be able to do it in 6 months. But we don't want to go fast and do it poorly. And we're going to be running, both systems in parallel for a little while.
And it won't interrupt the audit in process.
No, I mean, we're going to keep using the old system until we cut over.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 9D, the CIP.
So Karen, if you could bring up this one. So again, just why the reason we're doing this, we need a council adopted capital improvement plan to back up our Nexus fees, which tie to our Nexus study, which ties to our impact fees. And we need to adopt that CIP before we adopt the Nexus study. So we had quite a large list of projects. We need to show the ones that we would fund first with impact fees with kind of a 5-year funding plan. And this is really the first step of that. And staff went through, identified about a dozen projects that we said would be the top priority. So tonight we're really looking for feedback from the council on that. There's no problem adding more projects. We have way more projects than we're going to have funding. But just legally, we need to show that we have a need for impact fees in order to charge them. And so again, I know 2 council members aren't here tonight. They will have a chance to weigh in. It's really not a bar of adding more projects to the priority list. It's just if we don't reasonably think we're going to get to it in 5 years, we're going to put it in the appendix. So be kind of the short list, and then there'll be the much longer list of projects. And then we haven't really started breaking out the funding. That's going to be the next step once we get kind of your feedback if these are the right projects. And the only other thing I'd throw out is, we have impact fees in different categories. So we need a project for each category. And that means streets. We have a police impact fee, we have parks and rec. We have city facilities. I think those are the major categories of impact fees that are relevant to this. So I'll stop there if you guys have questions or comments.
I had a couple questions just on the staff report part before we get into the projects. Did you guys have any, or should I shoot with those?
Okay.
One, the fire capital facilities fee, does that go to the fire protection district?
Yes.
2, I was just a little unclear. The program update fee and the administration capital facilities fee kind of seems like the same thing. I know we're paying for this with a LEAP grant, right? So I'm
Right.
wondering if there's a balance in this and what the difference between those 2 funds are, and
Yeah.
if they could be
It was
put together.
I mean, almost all of our impact fee balances are small. This one was very small. One was to pay for the Nexus study, and the other fee was to pay for staff time to manage impact fees, like overall. And so going forward, we're going to combine those into one fee.
That was my question. Then the last was a comment. I think that the idea to combine the other three fees into facilities, what is it, historical, city hall, and courtyard makes a lot of sense. Any other questions on that part? Comments?
No, I don't.
How about the project list?
And Karen, if you could scroll down, I think to the first list. Yeah, these projects, maybe stop there, table of contents.
The one that caught my eye on that list is the Anderson Reservoir under drain.
Yeah, so,
Isn't that funded by enterprise?
yeah, so we did put a couple of wastewater enterprise projects on here. Those are funded by the ratepayer study and the 218, the utility fees. We're going to be updating those. I guess we just showed those. Those are ones that we intend to do in the near future. So they'll be part of the overall capital plan, but they come from the enterprise fund.
Okay. So
So-
this CIP includes some of the things that are outside the impact fee.
Yeah, so the capital fees in those sewer rates are typically included in a plan like this.
The CIP, once approved, becomes part of the general plan, right?
No, I don't, it's not really part of the zoning. It's just the city's, strategic plan on the capital investment side, I guess. Ideally, once we have this in place with the 5-year funding, then we'll just keep updating it each year and, and the reason, again, if we don't do any development, none of this work really makes that big a difference. But if we ever get a large development, we want to have this in place. And so I have seen other cities that got sued. They didn't have a good capital plan and the money wasn't spent and the developers sue and get the money back.
I'm not sure if this is the right moment to bring this up, but I want to quibble a little bit over the use of the word overlay on some of these to describe some of these projects. I looked up overlay and it's pretty basic. You would take a street that's, got kind of rough, but not too bad. And you do an overlay right over the top of it. But when I look at these project descriptions, they seem more like a rebuild. There's removing pavement and then new road base. And so in my mind, overlay doesn't really describe it. On one of them, it said, it's described, oh, I can't find it, maybe.
I think it's totally a fair comment. I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
There's
should call
definitely
some of these.
more going on than just a simple overlay. So
right.
We can rename some of these road.
Some of these
rebuilds.
I think could be an overlay, but the description involves a heck of a lot more than just an overlay. And I'm wondering if we can, I'll take just for example, gold dust here. That to me looks like it could just do an overlay on it. And I see about regrading drainage and just a lot of work to me that, and I'm not an engineer and I don't want to, and I'm just throwing it out there as a topic for discussion that some of these projects could be an overlay and done a lot for a lot less cost.
yeah, when I was, I think a lot of these came from the old CIP that Weber Geo did. And I think they just kind of used overlay as just a general term.
Right.
I don't think they were actually specifically saying this one's an overlay, this one's not an overlay. So we should definitely clean that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
For
with that.
instance, from Patricia Lane, they call it Patricia Lane, 15% dig out and micro surfacing. That seems more descriptive of what's involved than calling it an overlay.
Yeah. I think it was just a general term that they
Okay.
used, but yeah, we'll go back and look at that again and change that verbiage. Yeah, I agree with that.
That's a good point, Jim, especially if we get the funding and we want to do these projects as a dig once kind of thing and get in there and do the pipes and the whole shebang in the area.
Yeah, it could be misleading too, because then if the costs are too high, then somebody might say, well, why does it cost that much for an overlay? You know,
Right,
so
right.
the project description might need to be more accurately. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't see some of the streets that are in good condition that possibly do just need a simple overlay. Is that something that
so
could be in there?
There's attachment B, which is a much
I miss
longer
that one?
list.
Okay.
Um, We added a few projects, but this is mainly the CIP that's been in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, like the Spanish Street and solar power and those alleys, that would be a major great start.
When we get to the point of throwing out things that we want to see somewhere on the list, let me know.
Yeah, now's the time.
Okay, Amelia Street.
So you saying that you think it's a top 10?
I
Or-
would. But,
Yeah.
and that's a one to me that just looks like an overlay. It's just, the pavement looks pretty sound, but it's got a lot of patches and stuff in it and it's really rough. And it looks to me like you could do an overlay without creating drainage issues or, but.
Okay.
Again, I'm not an engineer.
I would want to add the Gopher Flat Road widening, straightening. I think that's Cole Street to 248 Gopher Flat Road section that we're talking about. I realize that's expensive, but it's also one of the only, one of the most threatening to life items on the list.
It's high on the hill.
Yeah. And, could qualify for different kinds of funding, schools and
So if,
safe routes to school. Yeah.
yeah,
Should be on the list.
Aaron, if you scroll down to page
I
11,
think, would it be this one where I'm talking about the worst part?
yeah,
Yeah,
so I have a-
that's,
I have a-
page 30.
yeah, I have a
one.
question here though, page 11. Keep going, one more. Oh, that one's good. Yeah, so we did have this section of Gopher Flat. So my question is the bend,
No.
Should we
that's
swap
not-
it out?
That's not the section.
I know,
She's
I'm
talking about.
saying, should we take this one out?
I would
Put the
swap it.
bend in?
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
should both be in there?
I would swap it out and put
I
that
would-
one on
I would put
the
upper
appendix.
end in.
I mean,
There's 3 Gopher Flat roads on the list, so
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on.
This one is to add sidewalks and, make it pedestrian friendly, as
That-
well as
That one
repaving.
that section is, at this point in time, is far friendlier to pedestrians than from Cole Street
Okay.
Yeah.
eastward.
All right, so we'll swap it out for the curve.
Is the, excuse me, the attachment B, is that what then pops up as Appendix A?
Yes, probably.
Okay, so I don't know much about roads, but my neighbor had mentioned to me at one point, he felt the Crestview streets needed an overlay. I don't know if we should include that.
Yes, so is it in the list there?
I didn't.
No, I just don't know. I'm just voicing it because I don't know how much getting ahead of it helps it down the line from degrading to where
Yep.
the downtown.
Yeah, I think we had so many streets that I think when they originally made this list, they looked at the PCI index and picked some streets, but
Yeah, I'm sure.
we can take that one back. So it's Crestview.
Is that the name of the street? Or-
California Drive is the one I'm on, and I don't know so much the side streets, but that neighborhood was built in the 90s, so it's been a
Uh,
while.
There's neighborhoods that were built in the 1990s.
I know, but
I
but I'm
mean,
just,
excuse me, the 1890s.
Yeah.
no, I'm just saying when we're considering it, it seems worthwhile to
Oh, it should be
keep on our radar that if it's not as
But,
expensive.
Are you,
and
are
then
you
we
asking for a
wait.
particular,
I'm being,
yeah, but is a particular street? Susan, are you saying all the streets up there, or are you picking a street?
I'm not quite sure. I just know my neighbor mentioned to me he felt like that it was worn to like where it's bumpy and then it gets worse. And I just wanted to voice that
Well,
for my constituents.
to that, and you're right, Susan, they're gonna end up like the rest of the list if we don't do something, but this isn't the same list as a pavement management plan, right? That we'd want to build, if we have some revenue coming forward, that's different than,
Yeah, this
The
is more of a
CIP.
triage.
huh?
This is more of a triage, like
Yeah, this,
roads are like falling apart, not which ones do we need to keep.
ultimately, ideally, we'd have a plan to keep them up
Yeah.
too, I think is
Yes.
what you're talking about. I had another question. I guess several of these, but Knights Foundry and the grammar school pop up in my mind. Those projects, if they are not on our top 10 list and some kind of opportunity comes our way, working with a historical agency or with the foundation or the Foundry people or somebody, where we can get these things done through a partnership and, cost the city maybe not this entire amount. Are we putting ourselves in a poor position by just having them in the appendix?
No, if we get a grant and we can do a project, we'll knock it out. Again, this is primarily to show where we would spend impact fees.
So there's nothing, not being on this list does not disqualify a project from being done should the opportunity present itself.
Right. The trick, I guess, is, time and effort to go find these grants, and then do they have a matching component, and does that take away from something else? But I mean, this is your chance. So if there are other projects, like I said, it's no problem adding them, or if you think something on the list that we thought was a priority isn't, we can take it off.
Uh, not, not exactly. There were times, and I think the circulation element was part of it. Keys and Hayden and Fifield are on there, that it was discussed, and Jim would probably be able to speak to it more, that some of those streets be one way or two way or no way or parking or no, modified. Am I right?
yeah, I think that's come up from time to time.
That's not necessarily,
In other words, you're talking about the difficulty sometimes in navigating those streets because of all the parked cars. Does that kind of summarize what you?
well, I thought the circulation element had some perspectives where some of the side streets, Boston Alley, I think was one of them, would be one way to help circulation. And certainly we would want to consider that if we were going to make a change before we redid the road. So, those alleys are on the top 10 list. And they're in terrible shape. So, it's fine that we're there, but
I think if the prospect of actually doing the upgrades and on the pavement, there would be plenty of opportunity to look at traffic flow at the same time.
sure.
Okay, so I don't, this is really for feedback, so I don't think you guys really need to make a motion or anything, but I will talk to the other council members too and see, get their feedback, and then this will come back to you in kind of hopefully final form for adoption.
You good, Jim, Susan? All right. E, downtown trees concept.
You want to take this one?
Sure. So, this is just a prioritization kind of discussion. on what you guys would like to see in downtown. Trees are obviously good. I mean, we are not against trees. We just want them properly installed and managed, so we don't have to have them putting their roots into the sewer and storm drains. So if we want to go ahead and try to find locations that we can put trees in, then that's great. But we are going to have to take some time to do that. So we just want to kind of get your opinion on whether you guys want us to try to start looking for areas downtown to put trees into, or if you would like us to do the other priorities that you have before.
And I would just add, and I'm sure Susan will speak to it. So we have council members who have projects and, staff wants to make sure a majority of council wants something to be a priority before we start on something. So we're really just want to verify that you guys think this is a priority or not. And we would do the same if any of you guys bring a project.
Right.
So
It's not a priority in my mind, but we also have two council members who aren't here tonight. So I think that they should probably have an opportunity to weigh in on this subject.
yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, if you guys have any feedback on this, you could continue this item and we could bring it back.
This wouldn't fall into the category of a capital improvement.
Depends how big it got, I
Yeah.
guess. If it was just planting some trees, making sure they got watered.
Well,
Unless
I
if
don't,
it was like
Probably
the
would
in-
go in the capital, I would guess, but
Yeah, if it was a downtown.
it
street,
also depends on how big a trees you're putting
Because-
in. You
Yeah.
know, what kind of bang you want.
I mean, I think you could go into a whole discussion about are trees appropriate? Where would they be appropriate? Are they even appropriate historically? The trees the 4 trees that are now on the bridge definitely aren't historical, although there might have been a tree in front of where the auditorium is now, and it was the
Oh.
livery stable. I've maybe seen pictures with trees there, but so I think you got to weigh in the historical aspect, because we're attempt to keep the downtown looking historical.
Mhm.
Miners Bend, though, that's a whole nother ball game. It's not in the downtown historical
Yeah.
corridor.
You're
There is just, to me, in my mind, it's about expense, the cost. When we have a lot of other things that we need to get done, should that be a priority of where we spend our money?
Jim took the words right out of my mouth. I think it's two different things. The old part of Main Street and Miners Bend. Miners Bend, if we could facilitate that, it's would help with parking and, a million other things. It's new pavement. As far as the other part of Main Street, if we're talking about adding tree wells or something and putting in trees, that gets a little palladio, and, I'm not sure I love trees too, but I'm not sure it's the way we want to go. So I think they'd kind of be two separate items. To me, it's not above these other 5 bullets here on this list, in terms of priorities. But I also agree that there's only 3 of us here. So maybe if you took the feedback that Miners Bend would be one thing and probably cheaper and more feasible than figuring out how to do it with the old sidewalks and, the narrow main part of town. Kind of seems like 2 different projects.
When I was doing a little bit of research on this, there are photos of downtown Sutter Creek in the 1800s, and there were trees lining it. So as far as speaking to the historical part, and then with regard to, I was thinking that we could do this in phases, and it's too bad Miners Bend didn't get the trees when we did it, because that does look like a
I would
costly
agree with that.
project.
I would agree. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
That fell through the cracks.
But I do, like, I was thinking when I was reading over the items today about the small, because I've been visiting a lot of the small towns in Northern California, and I was thinking of some of my favorites, and they do you all have trees? And we're in such a hot climate and it seems to be getting hotter. So it seems like it would even be good for commerce. I mean, I know I don't like to be downtown in summer at all. So it would, aside from all the, the shade and the cooling, and it actually protects the asphalt, increases property values, actually helps with physical and mental health. People will linger more on Main Street. I think there's so many reasons. And the first phase, I was thinking, I was trying to be real low budget and looking just at the spaces that already have planter space that could host a tree. And there was a project, I don't know if you were on the council, Jim, when Bill Hepworth was on the council, and they had a very lofty plan to put all these tree wells and all, and that, and I'm thinking more of just something that could be a first phase. And to me, there should be like looking at what Sacramento and Davis have done so well and creating shade, and then the neighborhoods that are really thriving economically in those areas. It would be great to me if we had a 20-year plan. I mean, to me, it'd be lovely to have trees on Broad Street. And even I was looking at Crestview Estates. Why didn't we plant shade trees in the 90s then? And then it would be shaded. And but there's a lot of economic benefits to it as well.
And yeah, I guess one thing I'd throw in, a couple thoughts. I mean, you do have some really nice trees on Main Street on private land right now. Like if those trees went away, it would be pretty terrible, I think. Like where the olive oil place is, that's like a beautiful tree there. And there are urban trees that will go deep that, we would have to pick the right tree in the right place so that it doesn't break up the sidewalk or, send roots out.
I gotta say, I'm trying to envision where you would locate the trees. And, maybe you can draw me a map sometime and because I just don't see any places. We lost the tree there on the corner at Randolph. That tree was dead or dying. So it was a health and safety issue. I know it raised a lot of problems with the storm drain there. But other than that location, going up and down Main Street from Church Street to Hanford Street, I don't know where you'd put a tree.
Yeah, there's some planners. I think Councilmember Feist was looking at like where the farmer's market is, the corner there.
You gotta watch out for a line of sight though with that kind of thing.
Yep.
About
Some of
what?
these
Line of sight, like
Oh,
coming around the
right,
corner.
yeah.
So I think some planter boxes are not able to have trees because it's just where the other road goes, So
Right.
we'd have to,
Right.
we'd have to look into all this, but
And some
Yeah,
of the
no,
planners.
okay, that might be that parking lot. There might be a spot there.
Some of the planters do have asphalt bottoms, so
I mean,
you
our,
can't
our,
just plant a
our
tree.
sidewalks right now go right up to the street.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you would have to eliminate maybe parking to put a tree. Those are all questions
Something.
that have to be
Yeah.
asked about. And I think it would you'd want to notify, really do a good job of informing the public about have them get their input on what they would like to see.
Mhm.
If you're going to go that route, pursue it.
We could certainly consider it though as a goal when we do anything going forward. If we could stick a tree in there feasibly, we should. I know we lost the cottonwoods down at the creek. It's heartbreaking for a lot of people, but necessary, I guess at that point they were dead. And we
I
put
don't
in a
think they really
couple-
were. Sorry to interject. I think that was, and that was another place I was thinking maybe we could target to plant some more trees that would grow fast.
We put a couple there to
Yeah.
replace them and that didn't
So-
really work out, but that could certainly be a guide.
I would clarify to say that I thought we were just talking about Main Street. If you're talking about more in the park here, maybe the possibility of one at the VOH parking lot down there. But as far as tree lining Main Street, I have a different opinion on that.
Oh, no, no, I'm not thinking of that. I don't think, I didn't see it. I was just looking at places that were, like Main Street seemed like a good place to start. And here's the picture, that's from 1928. And there actually there's trees like right where, like Moulin Rouge or whatever that place is called now.
That's
right
right
at
the top of the hill.
Yeah, no, I was just looking at the first phase and then a direction, but yeah, Claire, thank you for bringing that up about the park, because if we could get some stuff growing down by that creek to create shade again. And even when I first moved here, there were trees in the Eureka Street parking lot by the pizza place that were shaded, and that was too bad we cut those down too. There was a shade tree by the,
I don't think there weren't any trees on city property there.
oh, we didn't cut are you sure? They seem like they were in that parking lot.
Not in the parking lot.
I don't know what happened to
They-
them. But
It
there
might have
was
been on,
shade.
like, on the other side of the fence of the parking lot on private property. But I
Okay.
don't think there was any on the city portion of it.
Okay, yeah, I never knew.
In Viola, it's just private property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's super on board and was even willing to give a donation. No, I'm not thinking tree line. I'm just thinking that places that could easily be, and maybe we shift it and we could get a couple of trees on Main, especially that big. And that's a really good point too, Tom. If we lost those trees in front of Bella Grace, there would be no shade. And they're old trees, so that very well could happen. But if it's easier to start with the park, like really anywhere, I just identified that as a quick improvement.
So
Aren't there some new trees down here along the creek?
They didn't really
Mhm.
take.
Okay.
There was a irrigation problem when they went in. I
Oh.
mean, I don't think they're dead, but
Okay.
yeah, nothing, or they might be dead.
And they're kind of redwoods, aren't they? Or, yeah.
I'd have to go look.
We did plant dozen and a half or 2 dozen redwoods at Bryson Park when we did the basketball court.
Oh, the new upgraded basketball? court?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
all around it and kind of the perimeter of the park, and they're growing.
There you go.
So again, I think what I heard, if you guys agree, is maybe we continue this item and we can add maybe a little refinement about the creek and Miners Bend, I guess, just to make it a little clearer. But then again, it still gets back to priorities and you kind of where you want us to spend our finite time.
I think you should keep in mind that the trees that went in, the 4 trees that were part of the bridge project, are growing, they're getting bigger. I was worried that they kind of looked like maybe they were dying, but I'm not. It looked like one still had leaves and the other 3 had dropped their leaves, and maybe that's just, I wasn't sure what that meant anything, but my point is, those trees will mature and provide more shade for that.
Those trees are purely in planters, right?
They're in planters,
So they
so I don't know
probably-
how big they can get.
they probably need fertilizer too at some point. I don't know if we,
You know, that might be something to,
Do those planters
on
have
that.
asphalt bottoms? Do we know?
well, they're on top of a
on the
concrete
bridge,
bridge, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
It's gonna have to
wow.
have some kind
They're
of,
planters.
That'll limit it.
Yeah, there's no dirt under.
yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually you hit the bottom.
But the plaza is a great idea of where Dan was talking about line of sight, just those 2, I don't know, I guess they're planters on either side of the crosswalk makes it very difficult to see, short people and strollers crossing the street. So
Yeah, that's a rough crossing.
okay.
They do hold trees.
So it's up to you guys if you want to continue it or not.
I don't want to spend a lot of time and money on it. That's my,
Well, if we could look at getting like 3 trees, if the planters would hold them and there's irrigation, would that be in the realm of possibility?
why don't you put together some, definitive locations and do an artist rendering of what it might look like, and then bring it back. Just a suggestion.
Did we want to bring this back on the agenda at the next meeting to let Dan and Julia weigh in?
Doesn't have to be the next meeting, like if
Oh, that's true.
we could bring it back with your feedback
Sometime.
when we're ready, like.
Oh,
Okay, are you guys good on that?
yeah.
Okay, 9F, the feasibility and ideas for a wastewater rate assistance program.
Yeah, so this one took me a little longer than I had hoped, but I was trying to find some kind of funding assistance. So this is to help low-income people, people on fixed incomes with the increase in the sewer bill. There was a program last year. It was federal money managed by the state of California, but it was only it was a trial that expired, so I couldn't find any outside funding specific to wastewater rates. There are several programs around energy, but nothing around water. So I did talk to ACTA, which manages a lot of these programs. And, you know, they haven't committed, but there was some interest in working with us where they could help do some of the administrative overhead. A lot of what they do is verify income and help people apply for things like this. So if council wanted to try this, and it's basically what I'm proposing, we put some small amount of money into it, we try it, we see what the demand is, and then we can decide if we want to budget for it next year or not. It would basically, and talked to Larry at the water agency, said this is kind of the way you have to do it with Prop 218. Basically are funding this with general fund money to transferring it into the enterprise fund is effectively what's happening. You know, some positives about doing it this way is there's no real money changing hands. It's all within the city. We basically would be qualifying people. They would get 25% off their monthly bill, and we would just build it into our internal accounting system.
But then we would be required to backfill the enterprise fund for the
Yes.
shortage
like-
between-
Like we, under 218, we can't charge people different amounts.
right.
So everybody be charged the full amount, but low-income people would qualify for a discount that would be paid. I'm proposing we use this council contingency fund.
Right, which was had a definite, there was a vote taken as to what that money was to be used for. And so that would have to be changed. And I would think that would have to happen with a full council because both Dan, I believe Dan and Julia were here when we,
Julia was for sure. I don't remember if Dan was.
think Dan was.
I think Dan might have been at the tail end, but we had gone through it for a very long time. I would suggest probably tabling this for the full council. Thanks for doing the work, Tom, because the full council did ask you to bring this. So I think everybody should consider it. I think the $20,000 might be a good way to start this. And I don't want to say as an experiment, but you know, as a trial and see where it goes. But everybody ought to have a chance to discuss it and could have other ideas. And I feel like we did somewhere along the line, Jim, when we were talking about that council contingency fund, we had even, I don't know if we voted on it, but we had made a recommendation that the whole council approve what it be used for, which would be another reason we should
But
wait.
we took, there was we took a vote
Yeah, but I think,
Someone made a motion that we use it, the first night, we made a motion that it be used for streets and roads, pothole repair. I think, and then we had, at my request, it was brought back at the next meeting, and it was, the motion was revised or whatever process was required, that we use it for, earmark it to be used for grant funding for road projects, so that we might be able to take that money, instead of just spending $20,000, we might be able to parlay it and get a lot more money for streets and roads via a grant or grants. And that was how it was left. That's what that $20,000 is earmarked for. So if we're going to use it for something else, we need to undo that, unwind it.
I would be open to doing that, but I think
I'm
we
not-
need the whole council to.
exactly.
yeah.
I agree.
So I guess we're both saying we should table it. Susan?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's a great idea to have some sort of respite for people, because the only reason I thought voting against it was the people that came, and it was really going to impact their existence. So yeah, I would love for them to weigh in. Julia and Dan.
Okay, so we'll talk about that another time.
This one, I think we could bring back to the next meeting.
Okay.
So
Mayor and council member reports. Susan?
No.
Jim? Me? No, except for the pile of letters over there. City attorney's report?
My firm is analyzing the new slate of bills. So likely before the end of the year, we'll have some updates for you. We might just provide them in writing. But just so you know, we do try to give those to our clients. Not a lot in the Brown Act. So, but you'll hear from us before the end of the year.
Future agenda items? Anyone? There's no information and correspondence tonight, so we can adjourn into a closed session.